Welcome to No Nonsense Psychiatry, the podcast that cuts through the noise and the confusion surrounding mental health. My name is Mark and I'm your host, and my goal is to give you the clear, practical information you need to understand your own well-being. No jargon, no fluff, just honest, helpful tools to help you on your journey. Let's dive in.
No nonsense.
Welcome back to No Nonsense Psychiatry, and the podcast that helps you tune out the noise and tune in to your well-being. I'm your host, and this is episode 27. If you've ever found yourself staring at an empty bag of chips thinking, wait, where did they all go? Then this episode today is totally for you. We're going to be talking about mindful eating. It's the total opposite of an autopilot grazing. It's not a diet, and it's not a set of restricted rules. And so instead, it's a powerful tool to build a healthier, more satisfying relationship with your food by actually tasting and enjoying what you eat. Why is this so hard? Well, the truth is that the world is practically engineered to make us eat mindlessly. Between constantly checking our screens during a meal or using food to soothe our stress or boredom, we've created this perfect storm for mindless eating. So today we're going to break down the biggest barriers to mindful eating and give you 3 simple, no-nonsense ways to start practicing it today. These are practical techniques, from the sensory check-in to the why am I eating pause that you can immediately use and to slow down, reconnect with your food and feel more content and, more importantly, in control. So let's dive in and learn how to finally eat with intention. What do we have? The reasons why we eat mindlessly, really. We've got the distraction dilemma, haven't we? So this is one of the reasons, and this is probably the biggest barrier for most of us. And because we live in this world where we constantly multitask, and that trains us to eat on autopilot, and I know for myself there's a lot of things here that I can sort of ring true with. The screen habit, eating while we're watching TV, scrolling on your phone or working on your computer, which means your brain isn't focused on the food, is it? And since your attention is elsewhere, you miss all those cues of taste and fullness, which makes us very easily able to overeat without even realising that. And I can honestly say that that's one of the things that I would be most guilty of at work, is that when I'm using my screen, I very rarely go to the staff kitchen and have my meal separately away from it, and it's a real nasty, horrible habit that I have. I'm only blessed that I would normally consume what I feel quite healthy food, so I don't see it impacting me, but I can see how it impacts other people, where you're working on the screen and you're not really thinking about what you're actually doing, and you don't really notice that you're nearly out of food to probably the last couple of forkfuls or spoonfuls. And of course then we have the rushed lifestyle where we're eating on the go, standing up or rushing through your meal, and your priority is speed, not actually savouring. We're just consuming, aren't we? Your body simply doesn't have time to signal to your brain that actually I'm full, because you're just continuously shoveling the food in. And then of course there's the emotional eating, and we often turn to food to handle our feelings, and that has nothing to do with the physical hunger. This is just extremely common, and it's a human coping mechanism, and we may do that to soothe stress. And some people will reach for their food when they feel overwhelmed or anxious, and food becomes that temporary, easy way to manage difficult emotions. Some people will feel that they need to relax, and they'll eat a bar of chocolate or a block of chocolate, for instance, or they'll eat some chips because they're watching Netflix as an excuse, but they feel quite bored, and fighting boredom is probably another reason why a lot of people do graze or snack, simply because they're bored or they're lonely, and they want something to do rather than because their stomach is actually rumbling and they want something to eat. And I've been guilty on that on many occasions. And then there's the reward system. And if food was used as a reward when you were a child, you may still use it to celebrate or console yourself as an adult. And how often will we say that? Oh, I'm having a little treat. I've worked hard all week. I'm going to have pizza and eat a large pizza because it's cheaper it's $1 more expensive than a small pizza. You know, it's kind of that kind of thing, isn't it? And I've always felt, my wife often tells me that, you know, you're not a dog. You don't need to reward yourself if you're sitting nicely. And then we ignore our body's wisdom as well. So in this sort of diet-obsessed culture, we're often taught to listen to external rules instead of our own bodies. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of people out there that actually give good nutrition advice. They clearly look after themselves and look after their bodies, and their intentions are to demonstrate how if you followed a similar pattern, then you would achieve the same sort of results. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there are other ways of looking at it, and one of the ways is to use the basics of eating. So, you know, many of us grew up with the rule, say, for instance, that we must finish everything on the plate. You know, how many people have said, oh, Mum said, if you don't eat that, I'm going to, you know, starving people in other countries, and, you know, you're just wasting food. So a lot of times we'll just overeat our body's natural fullness signal, you know, and that's very common. You know, somebody might have a meal that they've really enjoyed, and then someone says, oh, do you want the rest of mine? I can't finish it. And they'll eat it, you know. And that's kind of like that mentality, isn't it? And then there's dietary obsession, and that's being over-focused with calorie counts, macros, and rigid rules. And that pulls your attention away from the same simple questions. How does this food feel in my body right now? You know? And then we kind of miss the signals, and because we're used to eating mindlessly or on a schedule, we can lose the ability to recognise true physical hunger. You know, a gradual ache versus the emotion. Hunger is a sudden, specific craving. You know, so we kind of miss all these signals when we're focused on dietary stuff. And then, of course, the world is designed, and it encourages consumption and not reflection. And that is so true, isn't it? You know, we are a consumer society. We shop online, we go shopping, we eat that way, we buy, we look for bargains, 2 for 1, and all that sort of thing that go on. I only buy stuff when it's on clearance, you know, that sort of stuff. So, and this also gets with supersized portions in restaurants. You know, goods are packaged that way, and even the dinner table often presents us with portions that are much larger than what we actually need to feel satisfied. And then there's the availability. When tempting snacks are easily visible and accessible, like a bowl of sweets on a desk at work, you know, our willpower, as much as we don't do it. And how many times have I done this at work? You know, there are so many people that bring treats into where I actually work. It's really hard. You can ignore a table for, you know, 5 or 6 parties by it, and then at one point you take just one big piece of chip or something like that, and you're hooked in, and it just makes it like an almost automatic reflex, doesn't it? Okay, so the good news is that recognizing these obstacles is the first big step to becoming more mindful as an eater. So here are 3 simple ways to get started. The first one is the sensory check-in, and this is all about using your senses to experience your food, and it helps you slow down and really pay attention to what's in front of you. So how does it work? So before you even take a bite, take a moment just look at your food. Notice all the colours and the shapes and the way it's arranged on your plate. You know, take a good look at it, see what it's like, and then smell it. What aromas do you smell? What aromas do you pick up? And then finally, as you chew, pay attention to the texture. Is it crunchy? Is it soft or chewy? And of course, focus on the flavours. So the benefit of this is that this really quite simple practice turns eating from a chore into a multi-sensory experience, and it makes you feel more satisfied with your meal because you're actually experiencing it instead of just getting it over with. The next step is to slow down your pace. So most of us, right, will eat way too fast. I am a super fast eater. My parents used to call me Dusty Bin, which was a character on a quiz show that used to eat everything, and they used to call me Dusty Bin because I just would eat so quickly. So our brains don't even have time to register that we're full because this often leads to overeating. So how it works, so try a few easy tricks to slow yourself down. Chew each bite of food more slowly and then put your fork down between bites. You can also try taking a sip of water after every few bites. And the benefit of this is that it gives your body that time to send signals to your brain that you're getting full, and you're more likely to find that you eat less and you're more content afterwards because your body and your mind are more in sync. And then finally, ask, why am I eating? Sometimes we eat for reasons other than hunger, like boredom, stress and sadness. So this strategy is all about being honest with yourself before you eat. Okay? How it works. So before you grab a snack, just pause a second and ask yourself, am I actually hungry right now? If the answer is no, then ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Maybe you're feeling bored or tired. Okay? So the benefit of this is that you have this small pause. And I often find this a lot in mental health when people tend to react. But if you can create some sort of pause or some sort of break in what's happening to you, and in this particular case, having a pause helps you break that root of your cravings. And if you're not hungry, you can choose to address that real issue, like going for a walk, or if you're bored or resting, you could do that instead. So there you go. There's 3 different methods that you can use. That was a great session on fundamentals of mindful eating, and I think wrapping up, to recap, we've covered the 4 big hurdles that get in the way from mindful eating: distraction, emotional eating, body's wisdom, and our environment. But you've also had the tools to start overcoming these right now. And remember, mindful eating isn't about being perfect, okay? I can't stress that enough, and I've talked about that on many shows before, about perfection. It's not about being perfect. It's just about being present. Starting small by practicing one of our 3 simple strategies: the sensory check-in to truly experience your food, slowing down your pace to give your brain some time to register fullness, and asking yourself, why am I eating, to catch those emotions and the boredom triggers. Mindful eating is a skill, okay? And like any skill, as I've said this so many times before now, it gets easier with practice. So be patient and be kind to yourself, okay, as you start this journey. Before we go, if you found the podcast helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit from it. You can also support the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It only takes a moment, but it makes a big difference in helping us reach more people. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode of No Nonsense Psychiatry.
No nonsense.